DocTalk is brought to you by Multimin USA, manufacturers of Multimin 90, sure trace mineral supplementation by timed injection.
Hi there folks, I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here, and we're glad that you chose to join us on DocTalk this morning. It's bound to be a great show. We have Dr. Chris Reinhardt, who's an associate professor over in the Animal Science Department here at Kansas State University, joining us today. And we're going to talk about endpoints and marbling of fat cattle. It's bound to be a great show. We're sure glad you joined us. Hope you stick around and enjoy.
We started using Multimin about 4 years ago. We started out first in our own cow herd and our own replacement heifer program just to see how it'd work, experiment with it. We don't like to put a new product out there with our clients unless we've tried it ourselves or there's a lot of data behind it that we like. We had really good results with it our first year, really are happy with the way things worked. So we decided to start using our clients, and we have been now for 3 years, and I would say 90 to 95% of our clients use Multimin.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value. This segment is brought to you by Rotomix, manufactured in the USA and designed for feeding performance in the feedlots, beef production, dairy, and cow-calf operations.
Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be back.
It's always good to have Dr. Chris Reinhardt here on the show. Chris is our feedlot extension specialist for the state of Kansas, and he's an associate professor over in the Department of Animal Science and Industries and a great partner to the Beef Cattle Institute, helps me direct it. And we're going to talk about endpoints in fat cattle, talk about marbling, but let's just start out with talking about how we, what are our endpoints? What are things that we're thinking about?
As we look at how the industry's changed over the last 20 to 30 years, marbling has become a much greater concern and a really popular endpoint. A lot of producers all the way back to the ranch are breeding cattle for better marbling content, and then they're putting those into programs where they're going to be rewarded for that marbling content at the end of the feeding period.
So let's talk a little bit about marbling. So what exactly is the marbling? Where do we measure it? How do we measure it? And what's it good for?
Well, let's start with the last one. Marbling is one of the many things that make a great beef steak taste as good as it does. And that's why it's become so popular, especially in the U.S., but really abroad as well. There's a growing market for high quality beef.
Yep. And so how do we measure marbling? I mean, we have different, that's the beautiful thing about DocTalk is we have cattlemen, non-cattlemen, consumers. Let's talk a little bit about marbling in general.
Yeah, it's easy for anyone to identify. You go to the grocery store, and marbling is simply the white fat that's within the red cells of the muscle. You can see it at a glance. The more of that white fat that's within the muscle, really, for the most part, the better that steak is going to taste coming off the grill.
Yep, and the other thing for people like me that might get a little distracted, provides a little bit of cooking insurance too, that fat. So if you're really good at cooking them, you can go with the lower fat ones, but somebody like me needs a little bit of help, might need a little bit on there. We mentioned genetics, we mentioned what the marbling is. What are some of the things, associated, not necessarily price levels with beef cattle? Are we rewarded for marbling?
We are, and the industry has changed over, again, the past 20 years to where we really do have a higher fraction of our total national cattle population grading very well into what we'll call the choice grade. But even beyond that, if you can get cattle that grade even above choice, there is a financial reward even beyond that.
Well, it's something that's always been of interest to me. I know it's been an interest to you, and it's something that when we have the choice select spread and we're being paid a premium for more marbling, something that we need to chase after. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk more with Dr. Chris Reinhardt about reaching your endpoints with fat cattle and how that's associated with proper marbling. You're watching DocTalk. We're sure glad you joined us.
This segment was brought to you by Brute Cattle Equipment, makers of the Brute Stealth Hydraulic Chute. If the chute fits, swear by it. Visit our website for more information. And by Lalaman Animal Nutrition, dedicated to the development and production of natural and differential solutions for animal nutrition. Beef producers need a practical choice when antibiotic therapy is required. More than ever, they are reaching for non-prescription Noromycin 300LA from Norbrook. Specially formulated to produce sustained antibiotic blood levels up to 4 days in cattle, Noromycin 300LA delivers economic, broad-spectrum disease management for pneumonia, shipping fever, pink eye, wound infections, and foot rot. See for yourself why Norbrook's Noromycin 300LA is the practical choice for your herd.
This hog is head over hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Getting ready to work cattle for pre-breeding and calf vaccinations? There's no better time to use a safe, modified live virus vaccine to prevent BRD. Titanium provides the correct equation for BRD with its excellent safety profile and a strong response and long duration of immunity. Ask your veterinarian about modified live virus vaccines and the 8 convenient combinations of titanium for the perfect pairing of performance and value.
Dr. Dan here. Whether I'm driving up and down the roads covering the state of Kansas or I'm getting between Riley and Manhattan for my job, I'm driving a Ford truck. I'd like you to come out and visit my friends here at Dick Edwards Ford. They have a truck that'll suit your needs, whether you're looking for power with a Power Stroke diesel or if you're looking for fuel efficiency with the new EcoBoost engine, they got a truck that's just right for you. They're located 2 miles east of the Town Center Mall in Manhattan, Kansas, and they'll bend over backwards to help you. And I'll see you down the road.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by Norbrook Laboratories, manufacturers of Noromycin LA, Normectin Plus, 1%, and Poron, the practical choice for your herd.
Folks, welcome back to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Chris Reinhardt. We both work at Kansas State University. Chris is with the Department of Animal Science, where he is an associate professor, and he is our state feedlot specialist here at Kansas State. And I work over in the College of Veterinary Medicine, but we're talking about reaching the end point. And so I want to make sure my cattle are going great. So if you're going to drop the hammer on one topic, where would you go?
Fat. Marbling is fat. It is the fat that we call the taste fat. It's buried within the muscle, but really cattle fatten throughout their body. And plain and simple, the most important way to get cattle to reach that marbling endpoint is to have enough fat throughout their carcass.
Okay, so what percentage fat? We all go through the BMI indexes and we go through all these things, but what percent body fat does a carcass need to be or a steer need to be to reach its potential marbling?
Simply put, the vast majority of fed cattle will reach low choice at about a yield grade 3.
Okay, so you'll get grade 3 and that, you hear the term 28% fat, body fat. Is there anything to that number? I'm going to keep pushing you until I get an answer on that.
There is something to that, but really for the producer, whether he's the cattle feeder or the rancher, if I can see a very visible bloom on those cattle, we talk about 4 to 5 tenths of an inch of back fat on those cattle, is not an extremely fat animal, and yet the vast majority of cattle, that's plenty fat to grade low choice.
Sure, and they always say, the finish of the animal is in the eye of the producer or eye of the owner, and so looking for that bloom, getting to that yield grade 3, once you see the fat cover on those animals to kind of have that Y3, then we're there. And but if we don't get there,
exactly. The reverse is also true, and this happens every year, frequently, when the market takes a huge swing up and when just simply having live cattle available for sale has tremendous value, we wind up selling a lot of cattle well before they're fat enough to really reach that marbling endpoint.
And when we're short, cattle supplies, and as we see our cow herd diminishing, it's amazing to me that we are getting the endpoints reached. People are trying to reach back further to keep the supply steady, but it seems like we're doing a good job. You know, when we come back, we've got a little bit of time here before the break, but when we come back, kind of give us a preview of some of the other things that we'll talk about as far as the endpoint, reaching endpoints, things like genetics and that.
Right, genetics, I've studied this a ton, and I used to be a believer that it was really just about fat endpoint and yield grade. Well, genetics do play a role, and it's probably not quite as important as getting cattle fat enough to grade, but it is really important. How those cattle have been raised, provided they are of quality genetics, if they're mismanaged at certain points in their life, they're going to have a lot poorer likelihood of ever being able to reach that endpoint.
It's going to be some great information, folks. We'll see you here after the break.
This tip brought to you by Baytril 100 Enrofloxacin Injectable, now approved for use in controlling BRD in high-risk cattle. Baytril 100, right the first time, whether it's controlling BRD in high-risk cattle or treating BRD.
Hi there, folks. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson, and this week's On the Farm Tip, sponsored by Bear Animal Health, focuses on low-stress cattle handling of sick cattle. When a calf is identified with bovine respiratory disease in its home pen, we have to move it to the hospital. Those animals should not be run or stirred up as they're sick with a respiratory disease. If they get to the hospital pen system and we're going to have a delay before we doctor them, be sure to give those animals shade, water, and a little bit of hay. Now, when we move those animals through our system, through the tub, it's important not to mix larger animals with smaller animals, as those animals can become trampled or get pinned underneath the large animals, and the outcome's not good. Low-stress cattle handling, early disease identification, all of these things are important to assure animal health. This is your On the Farm Tip from Bear Animal Health, and I'll see you down the road.
With BRD, every second counts. And when you get new high-risk cattle, you've got a choice to make. You can either take your chances and wait and see what happens, or you can take charge of BRD. Right from the start, treat bacteria up front with Baytril 100 Enrofloxacin Injectable, now approved by the FDA for BRD metaphylaxis in high-risk cattle. Ask your veterinarian about Baytril 100 and make it your go-to drug to control BRD in high-risk cattle or for treatment of BRD. Baytril 100, right the first time.
Hi, I'm Kevin Ochsner, host of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman and Colorado Rancher. Join me each week as the National Cattlemen's Beef Association brings you the latest updates in industry information and market news. Plus, each week we provide important educational information and features on cattlemen from across the country just like you. And we can't forget our favorite cowboy poet, Baxter Black. Join me for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, debuting Tuesday nights at 8:30 Eastern, right here on RFD TV.
I give Multimin 90 every 120 days. The reason I give it every 120 days is because it seems to keep those cattle fresher. But you can notice a great difference in those cattle from the first day you give it to the last day you give it. When I run them through the chute and I give them a shot of that Multimin 90, I know exactly what I'm giving them. It's just more economical as a whole on the bucking bull side of the business. The simplicity of Multimin 90 is, just like I said, I know what I'm giving them and when I give it to them.
This segment is brought to you by Fink Beef Genetics. Our 23rd annual bull sale featuring 400 Angus and Charolais bulls is Wednesday, October 30th. Contact us at 785-293-5106 for more information and to be added to our mailing list.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to DocTalk. I'm joined by Dr. Chris Reinhardt here at Kansas State University. And Chris is an associate professor, feedlot specialist here in the state of Kansas. And we're talking about marbling and reaching that endpoint with fat cattle. And Chris, as we left, we promised we'd come back to genetics and talk about the impact of genetics on marbling. And you know, the higher the propensity of the genetics, the lower the cover, and they still reach. And you know, it's probably confusing, but what do you think about genetics and marbling?
Well, there's any number of things to talk about with developing marbling over the lifetime of the animal, but really the genetics happen obviously before the animal's ever born, and we can actually stack the deck in our favor by making sure that the bulls that we use and even the cows have the ability to put down marbling at that targeted fat endpoint.
Sure. Is there anything management-wise that we can do throughout I mean, young calf, old calf, beginning of the feeding period, end of the feeding period? Are there some things there that lend itself to higher marbling or lower marbling?
If we just walk through the lifespan of that calf, it starts the very first 24 hours after birth, Doc. You understand the value of colostrum immediately after that animal's born. If that baby calf doesn't get enough colostrum, it's got a much higher likelihood of getting sick throughout its lifetime. And disease works against nutrient balance. And what we're trying to do is put down excess nutrients as fat and especially as marbling. If that animal goes through periods and bouts of respiratory disease primarily, that's nutrients that aren't going to be put down as marbling.
Sure. So anything that's going to slow that down is going to slow down, like pigs, they'll say that number of days, extra days in the grower equals 5 extra days in the finisher, things to that nature. But as these calves grow slower on the front end, or something that we do management that slows them down the front end, will have negative implications potentially in reaching that endpoint at the same number of days.
One thing we've been fighting throughout the U.S. the past 2 or 3 summers is drought and just heat in general. And that's not necessarily related to respiratory disease, but it is going to slow down gain on those calves. Extra nutrients equal extra marbling. And when we're short on grass and mama's short on milk, that's going to delay marbling deposition.
What about sickness? Same thing?
Disease, same story. And obviously at the feed yard, it's the greatest concern. But ranchers back home, if we're fighting dust pneumonia, that's holding those calves back. And scours, you name it. Anything we can do to make sure that calf, a friend of mine used to say, make sure that calf never has a bad day.
And then one more we'll touch on before we go to the break is nutrition.
Nutrition, huge effect for the entire life of that calf. One thing that contributes greatly to marbling is the amount of milk mama puts out, the quality and quantity of grass available. We know once they get to the feedlot, they're going to have a great diet and plenty of opportunity, but if we've held them back early in life, we're going to be playing catch up on the backside.
Lots of things to consider. Not as simple as just what one would think. Appreciate you being here. We appreciate you watching. After the break, we'll do a wrap-up with Dr. Chris Reinhardt on marbling and endpoints in fat cattle. Thanks for joining us.
This segment is brought to you by Purple Wave Auction, the easiest, most straightforward way to sell used equipment. Purple Wave, straight, simple, sold.
Kansas State University's Agricultural Economics Department has had a United States Agency for International Development grant extended to assist 3 South African countries, Zambia, Malawi, and Tanzania, improve supply chain activities. K-State agricultural economist Vincent Amanor Boadu is the coordinator for the project.
Our objective was to help the farmers get better prices. We are going to get that one person who enjoys traveling to do all the purchasing for the remaining 11 traders. We knew that for each travel that they did for the 2 weeks, it probably cost them 3 bags of 75 kg bags of beans. It means that each of them could get an extra 3 bags of beans to sell. So that immediately created value.
Cow-calf, stocker, and feedlot producers know that effective parasite control improves overall herd performance and profitability. Norbrook offers a comprehensive, economical line of pour-on and injectable parasiticides for every livestock operation. Consult with your local animal health supplier to set up a program that protects your investment and brings larger cattle checks this fall. See for yourself why the Noromectin line from Norbrook is the practical choice for your herd.
The Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine is a leader in food animal research and education. Our researchers are constantly expanding the knowledge of animal health and food safety. Through the Veterinary Health Center and the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, we provide practical services for animal producers. Home of the Beef Cattle Institute, the college is committed to animal welfare training and research. The Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine, knowledge and service for the future of animal production.
Got cattle? Rotomix manufactures a complete line of energy-efficient rotary and vertical feed mixers for feedlots, beef production, dairy, and cow-calf operations. Our mixers are available with the patented Generation 2 staggered rotor, the industry standard for feeding wet rations that include wet distiller's grain. Made in the USA, Rotomix mixers are designed for feeding performance that American cattlemen and dairy producers have come to expect. Rotomix, proud to offer a better mix in less time using less fuel.
American innovation is being driven in places you might not expect by people like Brent Hayek, an Oklahoma family farmer, who recently set a world land speed record in a Ford Super Duty pickup truck powered by renewable B20 biodiesel. Advanced performance is here, now, putting America on the fast track to more jobs and energy independence. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hi there, folks. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson, and welcome back to DocTalk. My guest today is Dr. Chris Reinhardt, who is our state feedlot specialist here in the state of Kansas and is a ruminant nutritionist and associate professor in the Department of Animal Science and Industry. And one of the things that we talk a lot about, we've talked about marbling, endpoints, and fat cattle, genetics, management, morbidity. But the other one that we like to discuss is implants or metabolic modifiers, which would include the beta-adrenergic agonists. And so let's talk a little bit about the effects of these and what they have on marbling.
Growth promotants are what I'll call part of conventional cattle production today. It's a normal part of production. Well over 95% of the fed cattle in the U.S. get some form of growth promotant. And so that's the normal state. But one thing we have learned is that growth promotants do exactly what the name implies. They're there to make cattle grow faster and more efficiently and put on lean muscle mass. There's always a trade-off. By getting cattle to grow faster and more efficiently, they're actually putting on the lean portion, and they're actually sacrificing a little bit of the marbling portion or fat in general.
So therefore, to get animals to grade at a similar level that when you use a steroid implant as cattle that aren't implanted with steroid, you have to feed them longer?
Typically have to feed 2 to 3 weeks longer, but some studies I've done have indicated even after we reach that fat constant endpoint, the presence of an implant will actually reduce the ultimate marbling content of that steak slightly, even when fat content is the same.
Interesting to know. Well, there's lots of things to think about, lots of things to figure in, but let's just kind of backtrack here as we wrap up. If you were going out there today and you said, all right, these are the key things to reaching the proper endpoint or marbling.
Number one, let's start with quality genetics. And again, the trend in the U.S. has been just that. We've got really good cattle out there. Number two, let's make sure the calves never have a bad day. And that includes nutrition from the very moment they're born. That includes managing their risk of exposure to respiratory disease or diseases in general. That's going to prevent them from slowing down or stopping early in life. Number three, in terms of growth promotion, really what we talk about when we're trying to hit a marbling endpoint is moderation is the key. Growth promotants at a tremendous value in terms of pounds of beef for sale, but by dialing back some of the growth promotion, we can make sure cattle have sufficient marbling at the end of the finish period.
And we kind of look at that, get that terminal implant or that last implant in their ear 100 days prior to slaughter.
Roughly. Very good timeline. If you can get that into their ear 100 days before slaughter and then making sure cattle reach that yield grade 3 endpoint. Again, they don't have to be excessively fat.
Yep. At the end of the day, you got to get them to a Y3 regardless of the rest. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Doc.
It's always good to have Dr. Chris Reinhardt here from the Department of Animal Science and Industry at Kansas State University. Remember, if you want to know what we do here at Kansas State University, you can find us on the web at www.ksut.edu. vet.ksu.edu. Remember to always work with your local practitioner. Thanks for watching us today on DocTalk. We sure enjoyed it. My name is Dr. Dan Thompson, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
DocTalk, produced in cooperation with Drovers Cattle Network and Bovine Veterinarian. For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com. DocTalk was brought to you by Multimin USA, manufacturers of Multimin 90, sure trace mineral supplementation by timed injection,